Hello and welcome to the Dialectic, a podcast by Fair Observer. We are an independent non-profit and have published more than 2,500 voices from over 90 countries. I'm Atul Singh, the founder, CEO, and editor-in-chief.
And I'm Glenn Carle, author of The Interrogator and a former Deputy National Intelligence Officer who retired from a 23-year career in the CIA.
Together, we are going to dive into the deeper issues behind the news, look under the surface and around the corner. To the best of our ability, we will make sense of the world, from democracy in America to the economy in India. Before we do so, it might be a good idea if you know a bit more about us, the Rajput and the Wasp.
Well, clearly I'm the Wasp. I've known Atul for 11 years now, at least. We met on Capitol Hill in 2010, I believe, when I was speaking about my book on torture, terrorism, and on the war on terror. My first impression of Atul was actually to be wary. I've tended to find in my many public talks that the more intense or pointed a questioner, the more challenging it might be to give a satisfactory response and to avoid being caught, as it were. But I found Atul's questions were informed and fair, if persistent, and he was not seeking to score points with the person on the podium, but to find out really what the context of my thoughts were and whether I could answer substantively.
I, on the other hand, was not wary at all. I still remember chasing Glenn up after he finished speaking. Many people had wanted to speak to him on that day. He was like a rock star. People wanted a few seconds of his time and attention. I could barely get a word in. Anyway, Glenn promised me that he would find me later, and I thought that was unlikely. But, it's a reflection of the sort of chap he is. He did find me. He turned out to be a man of his word. And in the course of our first conversation, gave me my first tour of the US Congress. I was struck then and am struck now by Glenn's erudition, experience, and of course, insights. As you can probably guess, I still remain starstruck. Over the years, it has been surprising to discover how much we share in common. We have very different backgrounds and contrasting personalities, but our historical, philosophical, and social views are strikingly similar. As you might have guessed by now, Glenn is he's one of the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants from Boston. They're better known as WASPs. Glenn is a bit of a caricature of a stereotype. He played ice hockey for Harvard and lived and worked in France for many years. He served in the CIA around the world. He has written a fantastic book, and I jokingly say that Glenn is the last of the old-style WASPs. We'll have to preserve him in the British Museum along with the Egyptian mummies to understand a bygone era when he's gone.
Yeah, well, I have told my children that they are guaranteed employment in a display case in the British Museum. So there's some upside to being an antique and passed by history. Well, Atul, as he said, is a Rajput, but I'm American and not English, although I am a WASP. So I don't really have the genetic grasp that descendants of the Raj might have about the subtleties of the subcontinent's ethnic constitution. But it is clear, in any event, that Atul would have preferred, it's clear, he would have preferred to be born in the 4th or 5th century so that he could lead hordes across the steppes someplace and establish or destroy a kingdom. Preferably destroy others and then establish his own, I think. So how mundane is today's world? The age of heroes and quests has been reduced to econometric models and to tax rates. But Atul served also, in being serious, as an unusual kind of officer on India's borders, uh, combining, I think, military, diplomatic, and intelligence work, if not formally, but although I'm not sure he will say. He was a scholar at Oxford. He practiced law in London. He did an MBA at Wharton, trying to clean up the mess of someone else who was there and has been repudiated happily by that institution. And I have to say, he seems to marry energy and intellectual integrity. He does make a point, it comes naturally to him, of speaking the truth as he sees it, something political figures and public speakers too often wish to avoid, lest they offend. And that's precisely why Atul and I are doing the Dialectic, this conversation between a Rajput and a WASP, and the podcast that we're beginning that you are listening to now.
Ha! My role is somewhat glamorized by Glenn. I did counterinsurgency for a bit in Nagaland, an Indian state on the Myanmar border, and did a couple of short attachments in Kashmir, a place you might have heard of. More about that later. More importantly, between the two of us, the Rajput and the Wasp, we will try to make sense of the world. Our first podcast will be about democracy in America.
Before we dive into the substance, what would you say, Atul, has driven you to pursue international issues with such a focus that was so apparent to me the first time that you cornered me?
I owe my fixation with international issues and world affairs, history, politics, philosophy, and culture, and generally an immersion in the humanities to my parents. I was born in Catholic Goa. My father's staff was Syrian Christian from Kerala. My mother's family was in Kolkata, the capital of West Bengal, the eastern state of India, the powerful eastern state of India. My striking childhood memories, actually my most striking childhood memories, are from Buddhist Sikkim, a part of the Tibetan plateau, and India's northeastern state of Assam, where elephants would come to the back garden to, I guess, I don't remember clearly, I have dim memories, to eat bananas from the banana trees. My brother and I would watch in hushed wonder. Going back to my parents, my mother is a literature scholar. She's from a family in business and politics. She was the driving force behind our education. Both my brother and I ended up in Oxford thanks to her. She was very focused on giving us a first world education in a third world country. My father was in the military, so it was a struggle for both my father and my mother to get us a good education. Lots of schools, lots of different places. My father moved around, as you can guess, every 2-3 years. So he was a military surgeon, served in the 71 war, and is an extraordinarily remarkable chap. My father gave us 4 children's history books, British and Indian, Soviet and American. So very early I developed a sense of wonder, curiosity, and desire to make sense of the world. I suppose that has led to Fair Observer and to the Dialectic, our podcast.
I think that we've made a comment or two, and light comment about our backgrounds and the fact that I am a WASP. And ironically, the fact that I am one explains pretty directly why I went into a career in international affairs and intelligence and writing about foreign affairs. I grew up in Boston, and then I made the dramatic leap across the Charles River to Harvard. It was 5 kilometers, I measured it, from my home to where I lived at college. And I loved Boston, I loved Harvard, I loved New England, but I was keen to go beyond what I knew and to challenge my assumptions and to learn what my assumptions were. And so that's what led me to pursue pretty aggressively and single-mindedly in my life to living abroad, where I often would be the only American, which I like quite a bit because I like to challenge what seems to be the normal way or the ruts in which we all think and that I think in too. One of my superiors during my career in the agency, and you have to pardon me for referring routinely, as I will, to the CIA as the agency. This is how we refer to it when we work there. He told me, as I was trying to provide him some context at one time for an issue in the Middle East, that he didn't want to hear about a graduate seminar from me. He simply wanted the answer. And, well, that was, of course, simply stupid. But what Atul and I will try to do is not that, but rather to provide the context and to wrestle with the various sides of the issues, these different perceptions that I have sought to become aware of in my career, so that we all may just see a bit more clearly and perhaps even decide how to act more clearly and in so doing satisfy that long ago boss, at least more clearly than him.
Well said, Glenn. Our entire endeavor is to ensure that you see light through many prisms and get to a better understanding of what is going on and hopefully make sense of the world. Thanks for listening to our first episode of The Dialectic. If you have suggestions for future discussions, please get in touch. You can find Fair Observer on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and of course our website, fairobserver.com. Follow us on social media, sign up for our newsletter, and download our app on both Apple and Android devices. We look forward to our journey together and to making sense of the world.
I'll see you next time.